Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Monday. Means we're brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. Hope your work week is off to a good start. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos, and fired up that you're hanging out with us here on this Monday. Have Denton Day coming up in an hour and a half. We have Denton on because we want to talk national college football stories. I'll kind of handle the local things early on in the show on Mondays. We'll talk LSU, we'll talk Saints, we'll talk SEC. Kind of wanted to get a national perspective, so I put Denton in the second hour on Mondays. Come to find out, big Washington football team / Washington Commanders fan, and now they got a quarterback that's just straight balling, Jayden Daniels. So we're going to talk a little Jayden Daniels and some national college football with Denton Day coming up in hour number 2. Thoughts on the Saints dropping that game in Atlanta coming up in 30 minutes. My SEC picks against the spread and how those went this weekend coming up in an hour. You probably don't want to miss that. We're going to have a little bit of fun in that segment. We start with LSU and South Alabama on Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. On Friday, I kind of said, look, this is a game where LSU's the better team. They haven't played 60 minutes all year, had rough starts, had rough finishes. This is the time to go out there right before the bye and put a complete performance together. And for the most part, they did that. You could take a little bit of a pick at the beginning of the second half. Nuss throws the pick at the end of the first half. They come back out. He throws another pick. South Alabama scores. They're driving down to make it remotely interesting. But Whit Weeks comes up with the big stick at the goal line. They stop him on fourth down. They go 99 yards and score. And they salt the game away at that point. And it was 42-10 when it all was said and done. And I think that it was a solid performance from LSU. I want to start with the defense because we talked about South Alabama coming in. They're a well-coached team. Major Applewhite's called plays at an elite level at Alabama, and he's been a head coach. And he has a good offense with a quarterback that can make some plays and a big physical running back. And they were going to come in prepared. But that LSU is far superior athletically, and they should be able to put the clamps on South Alabama. But they should have been able to put the clamps on Nichols too, and they didn't. They did in the game on Saturday. I thought it was a really strong performance all the way through the football game defensively. Was it as exciting defensively as they have been at times with their pass rush and forcing turnovers and making big-time plays in the backfield? No, I don't think it was that. I just thought it was solid. I thought that LSU was where they were supposed to be. I thought they fit the run very well and didn't allow the big chunk plays that we've seen. I thought for the most part they were where they were supposed to be in coverage. There weren't busts and guys running free. Now they've still got their issues covering. That's to me the biggest deficiency on this team is talent in the secondary and ability to cover and break up passes. But LSU was where they were supposed to be for the entire evening. Yeah, 333 yards is not shutting down South Alabama, but 10 points is. Stopping South Alabama from breaking the 10-point barrier is impressive. And if you look at South Alabama's drive chart to start the game, 5 plays, 18 yards, punt, 3 and out. Then they go down 44 yards and get a field goal. But following that, throughout the rest of the first half, 5 plays, 6 yards, punt, 3 and out. 5 plays, 18 yards, punt. And then they go to the half. You got that stop at the goal line in the second half, and then you also forced a 3 and out where they lost 5 yards. So you were in control of that game defensively in a way that LSU hasn't really done this year. And so for me, that was encouraging. Yes, you'd like to have Harold Perkins out there. Yes, you'd like to have Jacoby and Guillory out there. Yes, you'd like to be a little bit better against the pass and not let the quarterback complete 73% of his throws on you. But baby steps here. We all understand where they're coming from, and we all have a vision for where we hope that they get, and they're just baby steps along that way. You've got to be a heck of a lot better against Ole Miss and certainly Alabama on defense than you have been. But you got to take those baby steps. And to me, I thought they looked good. I thought the linebacker play was very, very good. Greg Penn had 14 tackles in the game. 7 of those were solo. Whit Weeks was second on the team. He made 9 tackles. And then Major Burns playing the star, which is kind of what Harold Perkins' role was. He was third on the team with 8 tackles. Between those 3 guys in and around the line of scrimmage, you're talking about 41 tackles. So I thought that was solid work from that group. And the defensive line has kind of been where they're supposed to be. They're not game wreckers. They're not dominant. They're not dynamic. But they're holding their own. And I thought they did a good job against the run of not letting South Alabama get cooking. South Alabama tried to run the ball. They ran it 33 times in the game. They only ran it for 3.4 yards per carry. And they didn't really have those big chunk plays. They had, on back-to-back snaps, Kentrell Bullock had a run for 21 yards, and then he had another run for 16 yards. So that was pretty much it. They didn't have another. They had 3 runs of over 10 yards, a 12-yarder, a 16-yarder, and a 21-yarder. None of them were huge busts. None of them were game-changing plays. It was just solid. And I know that we all kind of yearn for a day where it's better than solid, where it's dominant. But you got to get there. And they're taking baby steps. You didn't really see at any point last year any improvement. It was just always bad. It was bad to start the year against Florida State. It was bad against Ole Miss in a loss. It was bad against Missouri outside of a couple turnovers late in that game. And it never really got any better. They played pretty well against Auburn, who had absolutely no chance offensively. And quite frankly, we're a year later and they still don't have a chance on offense. They stink on offense. But LSU was bad against Texas A&M's third-team quarterback. They were bad against Alabama. It never really got any better last year. And I thought it was better on Saturday night. They're kind of finding who they want to be. And Brian Kelly said after the game, the time for kind of rolling guys in and out is over. Like, they've played 6 safeties to this point. We're going to go out there, and he said on Tuesday, because they take today off on a bye week, and it's going to be a work week, and we're going to get the guys out there that need to play in Southeastern Conference games. And so they've given a number of snaps to Deshaun Spears, to Jordan Gilbert, to Jordan Allen, to all those guys. And now it's time to decide who you're going to go with, because you've got a feel for what it's going to be at the level in front of that at linebacker. You know it's going to be Penn in the 2 weeks. They played a little bit of Xavier Atkins in this game. And then you move up one level, and it's Gio Pius and Ahmad Bro in the middle. And then you've got some pretty good edge players in Savion Jones and Braden Swinson and Deshaun Womack with a little bit of Gabe Relaford mixed in there. You know what you are in the front 7. And I think those guys are playing pretty well. They're rushing the passer, and they did a better job against the run, and they haven't allowed those monster plays that plagued them against Nichols and against South Carolina. Safety, you got to figure out, and corner, you also have to figure out. You've got Ashton Stamps on one side, and you're kind of cycling guys through on the other end. You've seen a good bit of P.J. Woodland. He was announced as a starter on Saturday. You've seen some J.K. Johnson. You've seen some Jair Brown. We'll see when Zy Alexander can come back. Sage Ryan moves around. It's kind of boiling down to what is the secondary going to look like. And if you look at the Pro Football Focus grades, they're not great in the secondary, and that's not shocking. But that's kind of the missing piece to this whole thing. That's where they've got to improve. Because while I don't think Gio Paez is taking it for the second round of the draft coming up, he's held his own. Ahmad Bro is only getting better. They really like him, and I think they've got something in him. And then beyond those guys, you got some of the older guys, and then you've got McKinley. But you're not seeing big issues up front. The issues are now in the back end, and that's where they've got to clean things up. I thought the defense did a good job the majority of the game, and that was object number one. I trust the offense and what it's going to be. I'm starting to trust the front 7 a little bit more. You just got to get better in the back end, and that's what they've got 2 weeks now to get ready for, because Ole Miss is going to come in here, and they're going to chunk it around. They pretty much abandoned the run game on Saturday against Kentucky. They were just chunking it, and they're going to come in and do the exact same thing in 2 weeks. And LSU's got to be prepared for that as best they can. So again, it's not a work of art. I'm not trying to sell you a bill of goods that this is a South Alabama team that's a completely dynamic offense. I thought they were well coached. I thought they had some guys that can hurt you if you weren't in the right place. And for 4 quarters in that game, save maybe one stretch of about 4 minutes of game action, LSU did its job on the defensive side of the football and got out of there with a 42-10 win. I do have some takes on the offensive side of the ball. I talked about them on the post-game show on Saturday night with Brandon Taylor and Marlon Favorite, and we're going to get to those here coming up. You know what you've got in the passing game, but what is this running game, and what can you lean on? I think you're starting to figure that out a little bit, and it's pretty obvious. If you read my Pro Football piece up at Pro Football Focus piece up at LouisianaSports.net, you got a good sense of that as well. We'll talk about that when we come back on this Monday edition of The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Make LeBare's Baton Rouge your game day headquarters this season. They got the biggest screens around, and now you can bet and dine at ESPN Bet in person. Look, folks, LSU's off this weekend, and the Saints play on Monday, so Saturday and Sunday, you're free to watch whatever you want. Go to LeBare's and check it out. It's a fantastic place to watch the game, and y'all have heard me all year long tell you about the Cover 5 contest over on the Cover 5 app. You really want to get in on that now. If you didn't see my tweet, there are 107 people signed up this week. Your boy, the host, the quote-unquote expert, went 106th out of 107. Only one person was worse than me. If you can't beat that, well, then you got real issues. I think you can. Download the Cover 5 app, put in that code LABRSEC24, and compete against me. You're destined to win if I put performances up like that. If you're not a member, you can get the Pen Play app today. LeBare's Baton Rouge is your live sports headquarters. Must be 21 years or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-589-9966 for help.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Rolling right along here, Monday edition of The Hunt Palmer Show, presented by Gulf Coast Office Products. And Baton Rouge Business Report was putting together its top office products distributors. Gulf Coast Office Products, number one on that list. No surprise. Trey Beal and his team are absolutely fantastic. All your printing needs, scanning needs, copier needs, all at one place. Gulf Coast Office Products. Check them out online, gcopnet.com, gcopnet.com. LSU got it done 42-10 against South Alabama on Saturday night. I thought the offense was very, very good. Obviously, you get off to a pretty quick start. First time LSU had scored a touchdown on their first offensive snap since Dalton Hilliard against Ole Miss back in 1982. And Caden Durham takes a swing pass, and he runs it right up the right sideline. I'm sitting there in the press box, which is obviously along that sideline. And when he kind of weaved through that first level of defenders, and the blocking up front was exceptional by LSU's players on the edge. When he got through that and he saw the seam, I mean, he put it into a gear not many guys have. That was absolutely incredible to watch. I remember, and there's a clip up on Twitter now. If you look at Chris Blair and LSU Sports Radio on Twitter, I asked Dennis Shaver, the track coach who we had on a pregame show. I think it was a season. I think it was the Nichols game. And I said, "Is he track fast? Like, can he run track at LSU?" And he's like, "Yeah, he can. I don't know if he will, but he's that fast." Sometimes the football coaches have a way of keeping their football players away from the track, but he's that fast. And I said, I really just want to see him open it up and get out in some space. And did he ever there? And nobody was catching him on that run. So that was really, really well done. And then the second snap of the game for LSU, they handed to Durham, and he busts it. I'm amazed that even with the angle, the South Alabama guy was able to run him down. But you saw the explosiveness that Durham has. And it's evident to me that he needs to be the feature back. I realize that's not breaking news here. You're talking about a guy who's making big plays almost every week. But the way that LSU's offensive line blocks, he's the best fit. Caleb Jackson simply has not been able to get ahead of steam up because there's not a big enough hole for him to accelerate through. Josh Williams has been okay, but he's not quite as dynamic as Durham. Durham's able to see the holes, to get through them quickly, and to make big plays. And he's now shown he can catch the ball on that swing pass, plus he had a catch for a touchdown in the game against UCLA that y'all saw. So he's shown you everything. He can make the big play on the ground. He can catch the football. He's getting tough yards. He breaks tackles. He's scoring touchdowns. Like he's doing everything you need. Now, I would not have told you 5 weeks ago that Caden Durham was in line to be the lead back on this team. I would never imagine that he would have gone ahead of Josh Williams and John Emery and Caleb Jackson. But at this point, I don't have a reason not to give him 70% of the snaps at running back. That he appears to be the guy that is the most dynamic and is the best fit for what they're doing on offense. In the game, he had 128 yards on the ground, including that 86-yarder. And then in the passing game, he had the 71-yarder and then a couple more catches, 3 in total for 89 yards. And he didn't play in the second half. Brian Kelly said after the game that it was a foot injury. Over at LouisianaSports.net, we reported that there were multiple toes on that right foot that were dislocated. He had to pop them right back in there on the sideline. I'm sure a little bit sore yesterday and today, but you're on a bye week, so it's okay if he can take some time out. The word that Marlon Favorite, who was doing sideline for the LSU Sports Radio Network, got was that, hey, if this is Alabama or a playoff game, they probably could have gotten him back out there with some tape that night. So no issue reportedly for Caden Durham moving into the Ole Miss game. Maybe a little bit tender early this week, maybe a couple days off of practice, but he should be good to go, and I think he needs to be the lead back for this team. Another great day in the passing game. Garrett Nussmeier throws for 409 yards and 2 touchdowns. That has become kind of commonplace. We just don't even really talk about it that much because he's throwing for that kind of yardage every single week. The 2 throws that everybody does want to talk about are the 2 interceptions. And you know that Garrett Nussmeier got the reputation early in his time at LSU as something of a gunslinger, a guy that was going to take some chances, was going to trust his arm, was going to try to make some plays down the field, and he was going to turn the ball over a little bit. And that's something that they were coaching him out of over the course of his 3 years on the bench at LSU. And through the first 4 games of the year, he'd been sensational taking care of the ball. Yes, he did make a bad decision against South Carolina and throw a red zone interception, which is tough, but that was really the only bad play he had made through 4 games. I'm not going to hold it against him that he threw that pick at the end of the USC game because LSU was in desperation mode. They were trying to run a hook and lateral. Mason Taylor didn't turn around. That wasn't a bad decision. It was just desperation time, and who cares? But these 2 throws were bad. They were bad reads. They were bad decisions. And they were bad throws. And the one at the end of the first half, okay, you're kind of getting close to the end of the half. But the second one, you're in field goal range. You're going down to put this game out of reach, and there was just nothing there. I don't know what he saw. I don't know what he was looking at, but he just winged it right into a ton of traffic, and it was an easy interception for the South Alabama DB. So those 2 throws were bad, but outside of those 2 throws, he was exceptional once again. I've got a piece up at LouisianaSports.net right now that talks about all the rankings that Garrett Nussmeier has nationally through 5 games, and it's really good. His statistics are phenomenal, and I think because we've been desensitized a little bit by Joe Burrow and Jayden Daniels, we may not give it quite the appreciation that it deserves. But you're looking at a guy in Garrett Nussmeier that is tied for the league among FBS quarterbacks with 139 completions. He's 3rd in the country in touchdown passes with 15. He's 5th in the country in passing yards at 331 per game. And he and Josh Hoover at TCU are tied for the most passing attempts in college football with 199. And so you look at what LSU's bread and butter is, that's it. Their pass protection's been excellent. Their production in the passing game has been excellent, and Garrett Nussmeier's piloted this thing about as well as you could through 5 weeks. LSU's offensive line only is 4th in the LSU's 4th in the country in passing attempts, and only 4 teams in the country have allowed fewer sacks. You've got Army, who runs the option, New Mexico, who's a heavy ground team, Georgia Tech, and then you got Oklahoma State, who actually throws it the most of anybody in the country, but it's such a quick passing offense, nobody's got time to get back there and sack them. But I think for LSU to be 5th in the country in sacks allowed and throwing the ball as much as they do, that's a testament to just how good the offensive line has been in pass pro. Will Campbell graded out exceptionally well in this game. Emory Jones did not have as good a day in pass protection, but Miles Frazier was excellent in pass protection as well, and that was just all on display in the game. LSU hit 11 different receivers in the game. You got Aaron Anderson involved for 6 of them. I love seeing that. He just looks like a different player. We've talked about this almost every week now, but he keeps doing it, and they tell me that he was healthy last year and that this is simply a product of him being more comfortable with the playbook and understanding where he's going to be. That is hard for me to believe because he looks so different. He's so explosive with those cuts. He's making guys miss. I mean, he was excellent in the game on Saturday. He had 6 catches for 73 yards and a touchdown. Incidentally, let me go back and talk about that touchdown because that was back-to-back throws that Nussmeier made in that drive. The first one was to Mason Taylor in a throw. There was no room to fit the ball in, and he absolutely threw a dart down the middle of the field. I was sitting next to Brandon Taylor in the press box when he made that throw, and I go, whoa, There's no window there, and he put it in there. And then the next play, he slides a little bit to his left to extend the play and throws a seed to Aaron Anderson, who cut right in front of the safety, and he makes that catch at about the 3 and goes into the end zone. That was just awesome quarterbacking by Garrett Nussmeier. And Anderson and Taylor were the beneficiary of that. Kyron Lacey had 5 catches for 107 yards in the game. Caden Durham had the big play, obviously, but he had 3 catches. Mason Taylor, 3 catches. CJ Daniels, 3 catches. Xavier Thomas, 2 catches. Juwan Johnson had 2 catches. Josh Williams, Kamorian Pimpton, and Kyle Parker all got in the mix. And I say all those names for a reason. Like, I want it to feel like there's a lot of guys that are involved in catching the football. It's a different team. It's a different animal to prepare for this team than it was last year. Last year was probably more difficult because you had the best quarterback in the country and you had 2 guys that you just couldn't cover. This year, you've got a really good quarterback who's playing as well as anybody in the country, but he is throwing it to a menu of different guys every single week. They're attacking you in the short passing game, in the intermediate passing game, and they're trying to attack you with the long passing game. They didn't quite connect on those as well in this game. Obviously, the one to Kyle Parker against UCLA was great, but they didn't do that as much in this game. I really believe that Chris Hilton can unlock that. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do Chris Hilton previews another time. Like, I can't. I've now done it for 2 weeks on this show and LouisianaSports.net, and then he doesn't play. And it's so odd to hear Brian Kelly on Thursday call a player probable and then not play him on Saturday. And he said it was a game time decision. They wanted to make sure he was 100%. But I don't remember a player being probable before and then not playing.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I do think that before the season started, we talked about Hilton and said the Ole Miss game is maybe a likely scenario that he returns for just because of the way the schedule works out. So it sucks that we didn't get to see him, and it would have been nice because I think he would have had a great chance at blowing the top off on that South Alabama defense. But at the end of the day, if we can have him for Ole Miss, that'll be more important.
That is what they'll do. And look, this kind of put a bow on LSU and South Alabama. We'll talk Saints when we come back, and we'll do some SEC stuff, the top of hour number 2. But I said on Friday they needed to go out there and put together their best body of work thus far, get to that bye week, and get prepped for Ole Miss with all your goals still right there on the table. And to me, that's what they did in this game. They played their best game on defense. Yes, I'd rather play your best game against USC, but they did it against South Alabama. And you still played really well on offense. You went. I mean, look, offensively it wasn't perfect, and certainly the turnovers hurt. But your first 4 drives went for touchdowns. Then you threw 1 3 and out in there, and then you had a touchdown on your next drive. So 5 of your first 6 offensive possessions did go for touchdowns. You played your best game. You are making improvements. I think it would be difficult to say you're not making improvements on defense. And you've still got an opportunity. And as you look at this, and this is a bit homerish, I will grant you, but I don't think it's unreasonable. A bit homerish, not unreasonable. Does Ole Miss look like a world beater after Kentucky? No, they couldn't block Kentucky at all, and they got beat on their home field. Like, that game is still difficult, but it looks less difficult today than it did on Friday. And then you look at Vanderbilt, they're Vanderbilt. You look at Arkansas, they're not great. Texas A&M's not a world beater either. Oklahoma has really struggled on offense and was quite fortunate to get out of Auburn with a win. Like, those are not world-beating teams. LSU can match up with those teams on any given Saturday. Alabama looks tough. That's going to be a difficult one. Trying to stop Jalen Milroe is going to be very hard. But LSU has a shot here to play some really meaningful football in late November. And they did their part this week to make improvements, to stay relatively healthy, and to get to that bye week playing better than when they started the season. And Brian Kelly's teams have all gotten better as the season's gone on. Last year's offense was way better in November than it was against Florida State. The team that lost Florida State in the Superdome in New Orleans was not near the team that beat Alabama 2 months later. There has been improvement steadily with every team of Brian Kelly's throughout the year. And I would expect this one to be no different. So if you can keep taking those baby steps, keep improving, you can be in the mix. If they can go out there on a Saturday night in Death Valley and handle Ole Miss, all of a sudden it is not misguided for us to start talking about whether or not this team can make the playoffs. I would tell you right now, as I sit here on September the 30th, that LSU does not look like a playoff team to me. The margin of error is too small. The defense is outmanned at times. And I think that they have multiple losses left on their schedule. That's the way I feel today. But if you start looking at the games one by one and you look at the steady improvement that LSU is likely to make, it's on the table. It's on the table. And that right there in itself is the beauty of this new playoff. In a 4-team playoff, LSU is cooked. They wouldn't be able to run the table and get there. In a 12-team playoff, with that quarterback, that offense, and all your toughest games in that stadium, okay, it's worth kicking around a little bit on a bye week here. They got to get better because they're not good enough right now to be that team. And I don't think they're going to get there, but they can. And they needed to make a statement and play better football on Saturday, and I thought they did that against South Alabama. Final score was 42-10. Solid effort on both sides of the football, and that's kind of our look back at LSU and South Alabama. If you're looking for LSU football content, you can always find it on YouTube. Hunt on LSU is our LSU YouTube channel. It's all LSU football all year round. Recruiting and team coverage. It's only football. If you're interested in that kind of thing, go to YouTube, type in Hunt on LSU, subscribe to the channel, and those videos will populate right there on your home page. Good weekend for LSU. Got the victory. Not a great weekend for the black and gold. A really shorthanded New Orleans team. Could have won a game there in Atlanta. Did not get it done in the end. We'll talk about that coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. I always talk about the full-scale renovations that they do at One Bath and Closets. They're fantastic at it. No project too big, no project too small. They can also handle smaller things, like a tub-to-shower conversion. We use our tub at home because we got the 2-year-old. He's got to take a bath. There's rubber duckies all over the place, balls, got monster trucks in the bathtub. Like we got to use the bathtub. Some folks don't like laying in a tepid pool of your own filth, to quote the great Kramer. If you don't take a bath, take the bathtub out. Put in a gorgeous glass walk-in shower. Completely changes the functionality of your bathroom and the aesthetic of your bathroom. May add some value to your home as well. And you can do it with the folks at One Bath and Closets. Go to the website, onebathandclosets.com. Get that free consultation. Check out the pictures of their great work, the reviews of their great work, and start that process with David Duvall and his team today. It's One Bath and Closets. You can find them online, onebathandclosets.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Talk to Denton Day coming up an hour from right now on National College Football Stories. Big fun day in the Southeastern Conference on Saturday. It was great football watching for those that were parked on the couch for about 8 hours. We'll talk about that, including my picks against the spread in 30 minutes. But right now, let's talk Saints and Falcons. I was prepared to come in here and tell you just how impressed I was that the Saints were able to get that win in Atlanta. Like, when you consider what they were up against in that game, you start the game with no Eric McCoy and no Cesar Ruiz. And then you start to look at the guys you count on to make plays, and Olave's banged up from a practice injury, and Kamara's got apparently broken ribs and a hip pointer. And then you look to the defense, and DeMario Davis is missing his first game due to injury ever. And you don't have Tyrann Mathieu in the middle of that game. Taysom had gone out. Like, you were a mash unit. And to find a way defensively to keep the Falcons out of the end zone and to do enough on offense to get the points on the board to take the lead with a minute to go was so impressive to me, understanding what you did not have on the field. And then one tough call on the pass interference, and you've got a pro kicker in range, and he rips your heart out. And it goes from, to me, an incredible organization win in the division, on the road, shorthanded, going into a long week. Man, it would have been huge. And it gets plucked away right there at the end on the longest kick of Koo's career. Just an absolute backbreaker of a loss for the New Orleans Saints. And there are a number of things that you could have asked to go a little bit differently, and you win that game. First of all, Rashid Shaheed. People muff punts all the time. I'm not going to go nuts about muffing a punt in a vacuum. You simply cannot, under any circumstances, try to field a punt over your shoulder inside the 5-yard line. Like, I'm okay with football players muffing a punt or dropping a pass or maybe getting a holding penalty on a tight play or a pass interference, even a Debo's pass interference that gave him 30 yards at the end. Those types of mistakes I can live with. I cannot live with a punt returner trying to catch the ball over his shoulder at the 3. That cannot happen. It is so avoidable, so easily avoidable, and it's unacceptable for a guy to put himself in that situation. I was listening to the radio broadcast at that point. We were coming home from church, and Deuce was on the call, and he said, look, you put your heels on the 6, and if it goes over your head, it goes over your head. You cannot back up and try to catch that ball. Just inexcusable. And you hand the Falcons a touchdown they did not deserve. And then you get an unfortunate break there on the screen pass. Atlanta did a really good job of blowing it up. They got some pressure on the outside where Carr was looking to throw it, and they got pressure coming in Carr's face. So they were in 2 places they were supposed to be. And instead of, the ball getting tipped and going straight down into the ground, it gets tipped straight up in the air, and the guy catches it and runs it in for a touchdown. That's good play by Atlanta and bad fortune for New Orleans that the ball just happens to do that. And those are the only 2 touchdowns the Falcons are able to muster. And no one has lost a game in the NFL with scoring 24 points on offense and not allowing the opposing team to score a touchdown offensively since the Saints did it in the early 80s. This just does not happen. And it happened on Sunday. And it is a gut-wrenching loss for this team that scrapped and fought and clawed to get it to a lead with a minute to go with a mash unit out there on the field. Alvin Kamara, I cannot say enough good things about Alvin Kamara. I still question a significant financial commitment to him for the next 3 years. And significant is subjective. I understand that. We'll see if they get an extension done, what that looks like. However, that's for another day. Today, you're talking about a guy who isn't happy with his contract situation, who showed up to camp, who showed up to practice, who's taken a beating every single week because the Saints are committed to running the football, who is playing hurt, taking shot after shot after shot, and producing. He's out there apparently with broken ribs, 19 carries, and he made 7 catches, 26 touches for a guy who's taking shots with broken ribs. I cannot say enough good things about him in this day and age where players are holding out and demanding trades and all that kind of stuff. For him to be that committed is amazing to me and deserves a ton of praise. And I thought his touchdown was going to be the one that did it. And unfortunately, the Saints weren't able to hold. There was a lot made of Dennis Allen's decision to go for that 4th and goal from the 7. You were down by 6. It was getting late. And you'd driven it down there. You'd gone 11 plays to that point. That was the 12th play of the drive. And you had the ball right there at the 7-yard line, down 6, 4 minutes to go. I probably would have kicked the field goal. But this is one of those situations where most talk radio guys will get up here and make a definitive, declarative statement on opinion, and that's probably the best for radio. But it's just not how I'm wired. And I don't think there was a right or a wrong decision in that spot, because if you take the field goal, yes, you cut it down to 3, and then you kick off to Atlanta, and you got to trust your defense. If you get the touchdown, you take the lead. If you don't get it, you've got them pinned back and you can potentially get field position. And that's what happened. So, it didn't go horribly wrong. Yes, they didn't get the 7 yards, but Atlanta took over, immediately went 3 and out, and you got the ball back with plenty of time and used that field position advantage that you had created to go get the touchdown. So it did not work, but you did leave more time on the clock. And this is the uncomfortable thing with NFL games, because the kickers are so freaking good that it doesn't take much to get into their range. You really only have to get to the 40-yard line, and most kickers are going to be pretty money from there. It's not a gimme, but if you hit 57-yard field goal is a far better chance to make it than miss it. Far better. 57 yards. And that's crazy. It was not the case 15 years ago. It is now. And so when you leave time on the clock in an NFL game, it almost takes nothing for a team to go down there and get you. And it took one penalty. It was one 30-yard penalty. That was all they got. And Atlanta threw up the white flag and was like, all right, 30-yard penalty. We got the ball on the 40. We're good. And they were good. So I didn't necessarily think that Dennis Allen blew it there. I didn't necessarily think that Paulson Adebo blew it with the pass interference call as he's trying to make a play there. Can't let him catch it. It's just a back-breaking loss in a game that you thought you were going to win right there at the end. And that's going to be a tough one for the Saints to get over. And you literally have as bad a turnaround as you could have. I guess it could be a Thursday night game would be worse, but going to Kansas City is as bad as an assignment as you can get. And that's now what the Saints are up against at 2-2. They were the toast of the league through 2 weeks, and now it just feels a lot different. And that's the way things go. It's a week-to-week league, and this week it feels pretty lonely in Saints land. Yeah,
I agree with you on pretty much everything. The only thing, one of the things that was interesting to me was while the Saints, the defense was incredible. They held them. They didn't score a touchdown, but one of the weird things was the pass rush kind of seemed to struggle a little bit against the offensive line for Atlanta, who are down a starter as well. So that was kind of surprising, but great play. Peyton Turner made a play.
I couldn't believe it when they said his name.
I mean,
I could not believe that.
Yeah, that was pretty cool to see. And I know Paulson Adebo, a lot of people are going to be talking about his performance, and they targeted him all game. They threw at Marshawn Lattimore one time, I think, the entire game. They just went into Debo the whole game. He had 3 pass deflections. He had the interception. He did those PI calls. But overall, man, like the cornerbacks, when they get targeted that much, like it's so hard to win.
Well, Debo is good because he's physical.
Yeah,
it's part of his game. He's not like Deion Sanders, who's got speed and he can just catch up to everybody in coverage. He's a physical corner. That's what makes him good. And when you're a physical corner, you're going to get flagged a little bit. And again, like that's what I'm talking about. Like, I can live with that mistake. It's a mistake. And it was part of the reason you lost the game. I cannot live with Shaheed going back there and trying to catch a punt.
Right.
I can live with a corner trying to play down the field, 30 yards down the field, and trying to get involved and break up a play, and you draw a flag. You knew the game you're in big trouble at that point, but like there's not really another option. You can't just let him catch it. I mean, so it's just tough. I don't have a ton more like insightful things to say other than that would have been such an amazing win to go to 3-1. And you look at it and you understand how difficult this start is. And you got at the Chiefs, the Bucs looked great. Broncos don't look very good, so that one you would hope to get at home, but then you got to go on the road to LA, and it's just, I mean, that one to get that division game won would have just been massive for New Orleans, especially considering who they were. I mean, there was a point out there in the second half where you've got Bub Means out there playing at wide receiver because Olave's banged up, and you're trying to give the ball to Jamal Williams, who looks like he's wearing cement shoes, and I'm like, how are they even going to move the ball? And then Kamara came in and banged up and all, was just pounding away. And Carr made some throws when he absolutely had to have it against a shoddy offensive line. And he found Olave, who made a big play even though he was banged up, and fouled Shaheed for some chunk yardage. And they held it together with duct tape and just about got to the finish line. But that's just really difficult to do in the NFL. I mean, you had JT Gray was out there playing defense. He's a special teams guy. It was just crazy. They almost got that thing done.
It just goes to show the how small the difference between a win and loss is. The Falcons could easily be 0-4 right now. If Saquon Barkley catches that third down, the Eagles game, they win. And if Rashid Shaheed doesn't go back to the 2-yard line and try to field a punt, they lose that one. So they could be easily be 0-4. And it's just man, that's such a tough way to lose.
I mean, look, it's y'all know I'm a college guy before an NFL guy. Everyone is well aware of that. But there is no denying the quality of the product in terms of competition that the NFL puts out there every single week. Like, most college football games are runaways. Almost no NFL games are runaways. I mean, you got this kind of stuff every single week. And even when you're talking about teams that don't have their best guys, still you're able to go out there and put that.
The fact that Willie Gay goes down early in the game, he's your replacement for Demario Davis, and then the defense still doesn't miss a beat really when you're down two your linebackers. And one thing I'll say though,
I had a guy out there, and I don't know who it was.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of. I was like, I don't even know who that is. I covered.
I think I'm trying to find the box score. I think it was Was it DeMarco Jackson? I think maybe. DeMarco Jackson.
And now that I hear that, Ross writes about him. Ross wrote about him a bunch, and I edit all.
And he wasn't bad. He really wasn't. So that just goes to show the depth of the Saints have on defense. But I will say one thing about next week with the Chiefs. Obviously, going into getting a win in Arrowhead would be a miracle at this point. But the Chiefs haven't looked great through this year. They just gotten wins. So I'm not going to say that the Saints have no chance. They're going to have to play almost a perfect game probably. But I'm not counting out the Saints completely just because of the Chiefs and their history. But they haven't looked good this year. I'm
fired up. We'll be watching that game at LeBair's on Monday night. So make plans. Come on out to LeBair's and watch the Saints and Chiefs with us. There inside the ESPN Bet Sportsbook. All right, when we come back, there was one game that got away from somebody in the NFL, and that was because the former LSU Tigers playing pretty well. Give you some crazy Jayden Daniel numbers when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is the website. Jonathan Carbo and his team right here in Baton Rouge. They are fantastic to work for. Those of you that are business owners, you've got an insurance broker. How many times have you gone to Google to review them? That doesn't happen a lot. It happens a lot for Highland Insurance Group. 100+ Google reviews of an insurance brokerage. That speaks to the quality of the customer service and their expertise in the field. It's the Highland Insurance Group. Whether it's property and casualty or your group employee benefits, Highland Insurance Group is your one-stop shop. There's still some disturbances there in the Caribbean, potentially into the Gulf. Make sure your insurance coverage is right. The time to think about that is not when the storm has already blown through, not when the car accident has already happened, not when the cyber breach has already occurred. The time is now. To evaluate your insurance program, get the Highland Insurance Group involved, and they'll help you out. They've got markets for everything that you could possibly need here in South Louisiana, where unfortunately insurance is necessary. It's the Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com, HighlandIG.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
I sat down at my desk this morning and I just started scouring the internet for Jayden Daniel statistics, and there are a lot of them, and they are out there. I kind of boiled them all down into one piece at LouisianaSports.net, but it's been an unbelievable start for Jayden Daniels. Obviously, last Monday night, he put the world on notice. Monday Night Football outduels Joe Burrow, and then he followed that up for an encore on Sunday, just smoking Arizona 42-14 out west. The Commanders haven't punted since week 2. They're the first NFL team since 2000 to score on every drive for 2 weeks. I mean, they are just absolutely cooking. Jayden Daniels is completing 82% of his passes through 4 weeks. That's a record. And the only two guys in the history of the league that are close to that are Tom Brady in 2007 and Peyton Manning in 2008. And both of those years, those guys won the MVP. He's got 4 rushing touchdowns, 1 in every game. And the only quarterbacks in their history to do that to start a season are Robert Griffin III, Cam Newton, and Anthony Richardson. Washington has scored 30 points in back-to-back games for the first time since 2017. That was 7 years ago. All the while, he's rolling up all these numbers, and he's not turning the ball over. He had 1 pick yesterday, but through 4 starts, he's been awesome. He's not turning the ball over. I saw this stat on Twitter. He was pressured on 13 dropbacks on Sunday. He was 10 for 10 on those 13 dropbacks for 96 yards and a touchdown, and the other 3 he ran for positive yards. He was not sacked in the game. Not 13 times he was blitzed and they picked it up. No, 13 times he was pressured, and he was 10 for 10. It's just child's play for this guy right now. And every single thing that he did well at LSU, he's translated that to the NFL. I told folks last year when I did hits for different markets as the draft was approaching, and I actually did a Washington, D.C. hit as well. And I was like, I don't know how you could do it any better than he's done it this year, because 1, he's been decisive and accurate every game. Not like one game he got hot. Every game. He's completing a high percentage of his throws. He completes the deep ball. He throws the check down. He's accurate and decisive. And then on top of that, when something's not there, he's faster than everybody in the college front seven, so he can run and get out of trouble and create positive yards. It's a nightmare for defensive coordinators to have to deal with this stuff. And it's translating to the NFL. There will be adversity. There will be adjustments. It's not just going to be a cakewalk. But his skill set is such that it's very difficult for me to envision him being a bust. It's just very difficult. Because when you make quality decisions, you're accurate with the ball, and you've got the athleticism that he has, it's just hard to derail that. The only thing that really can would be injuries. And he's a smaller guy, and he does run a lot, so hopefully that doesn't happen. But Washington has been calling out for this for decades. Keep in mind, during Daniel Snyder's ownership, they changed team names twice and won one playoff game. It's been a disaster in the nation's capital for decades. And it feels like Jayden Daniels is changing that at this point, and that's really, really exciting. We'll talk to Denton Day about it coming up in 35 minutes. I made a bold statement on Friday that, hey, we're going to have a 5-0 week here and against the spread. That didn't happen. We'll talk about it next.